The ground you walk on holds conversations from millennia ago. We are surrounded by stones that speak, not with voices, but through legend, inscription, and unexplained mystery. This is a journey through 30 ancient stories where the earth itself seems to whisper. You will discover a hidden world of talking monuments and singing rocks from every corner of the globe. How did a single stone slab unlock the language of pharaohs, and what secret makes a desert floor echo with the groans of moving boulders? What story from the silent stones of history would you most want to hear? That first story begins in the swirling mists of ancient Greece, at the very center of the known world. High on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, within the sacred temple of Apollo at Delphi, rested a stone unlike any other. It was called the Omphalos, a word meaning navel, and it was believed to be the literal belly button of the earth. Imagine a carved, dome-shaped stone, perhaps covered in a net-like pattern, marking the spot where two eagles released by Zeus from opposite ends of the world were said to have met. This was not just a landmark, it was a cosmic anchor point, but the Omphalos was far more than a geographical curiosity. It was the heart of the most powerful oracle in history. Here, a chosen priestess known as the Pythia would undergo a sacred ritual. After bathing in a sacred spring and chewing laurel leaves, she would descend into a chamber and take her seat upon a tripod, often positioned close to this very stone. Fumes rising from a crack in the earth, said to be the breath of the god Apollo himself, would envelop her. In this trance state, with the Omphalos as her physical and spiritual focal point, she would begin to speak. Her utterances, often cryptic and disjointed, were interpreted by priests as the direct prophecies of Apollo. The stone itself was seen as the conduit, the amplifier, the earthly receiver for the divine voice. For centuries, kings, generals, and ordinary citizens made the arduous pilgrimage to Delphi. They brought immense wealth and asked questions that would decide the fate of cities, the outcomes of wars, and the courses of lives. The answers that flowed, channeled through the Pythia beside the speaking stone, shaped the ancient world. So while the Omphalos never uttered a word in a human language, its presence was absolutely essential to the entire phenomenon. It was the silent partner in a divine dialogue, the physical proof that the gods could speak through the very rocks of the earth. From the divine whispers of Delphi, we travel to a windswept coastline in northwest France. Here, on a scale that defies belief, stand the silent sentinels of Carnac. Thousands of prehistoric standing stones march across the landscape in eerie, parallel rows stretching for miles. They are not arranged in circles, but in vast alignments, like regiments of a petrified army frozen mid-march. The sheer number is staggering, with estimates ranging from 3,000 to over 4,000 individual megaliths. Walking among them, dwarfed by their ancient bulk, creates a profound sense of smallness. You are in the presence of a project that consumed generations, yet its purpose is a secret the stones have kept for over 6,000 years. But local legends insist they are not always silent. Folklore passed down through centuries tells of nights, especially during the solstices or under a full moon when the stones awaken. They are said to hum a low, resonant tone, a chorus of granite voices rising from the earth. Some tales go further, claiming the stones actually move, turning slowly to face the moon or even walking down to the sea to drink. These are not just ghost stories, they are attempts to explain the unexplainable grandeur of the site. What could cause such a phenomenon? One compelling theory points to the stones themselves and the relentless Breton wind. Many of the megaliths are pitted with natural fissures and holes. As the coastal wind speeds across the plain, it is forced through these narrow stone channels. This can create a haunting sound, a low whistle or drone, much like blowing across the top of a bottle. On a quiet night with the wind just right, it would be easy to believe the stones were singing. Other explanations delve into ritual. Perhaps the alignments were designed as a massive ceremonial soundscape. Druids or earlier priests conducting rituals at specific points might have used chants or instruments that interacted with the stone's acoustics, creating an immersive, otherworldly experience for participants. The sound, amplified and distorted by the labyrinth of stone, would seem to come from the earth itself, standing at Carnac as the sun sets and long shadows stretch between the rows. The line between geology and legend beautifully blurs. The wind moaning through the gaps does sound like a mournful song. The stones, in their impossible alignment, feel less like random geology and more like a deliberate message. Whether the product of ancient ritual acoustics or the simple poetry of wind and rock, the singing stones of Carnac remind us that the landscape itself has a voice, if only we are quiet enough to listen. From the haunting chorus of Carnac's wind-swept stones, we travel to a place where silence holds a different, more profound weight. In the heart of Jerusalem, the massive limestone blocks of the Western Wall stand as the last physical remnant of the ancient Jewish temple. For centuries, pilgrims have come to pray at this sacred site, pressing their hands and foreheads against the cool, weathered stone. Many leave handwritten prayers folded into the cracks between the giant blocks. But there is another phenomenon reported here, one that blurs the line between geology and the divine. These are the stories of the weeping stones. Historical accounts and modern testimonies speak of dark, damp streaks appearing on the face of the wall, resembling tears. Sometimes these stains are described as water seeping from the stone itself. In rarer, more dramatic accounts, witnesses claim the streaks have a reddish hue like tears of blood. These sightings are rarely random. They are often reported in the days leading up to significant religious holidays or during times of intense political crisis and conflict in the region. For those who believe the timing is no coincidence, it is interpreted as a profound spiritual sign, a direct communication from God expressing sorrow for the world's strife or a prophetic warning of events to come. The wall, in this view, is not an inert object but a living witness sharing in the grief of the people who pray before it. Science offers a different, yet equally fascinating, narrative for these stone tears. The Western Wall is built from Jerusalem limestone, a porous rock that acts like a giant sponge. Over centuries, a complex network of capillaries and fissures has formed within the stone. After periods of heavy rain, water can seep deep into the ground behind and beneath the wall. Through a slow process of capillary action, that trapped moisture is gradually drawn upward and outward through the stone's microscopic channels. When it reaches the surface and evaporates, it leaves behind dissolved mineral deposits, primarily iron oxides and salts. These deposits create the dark, damp streaks that look like tear tracks. The reddish tint some report could easily be from a higher concentration of iron oxide, essentially the same process that rusts metal. It is a natural geological process, but its timing can seem uncanny. Changes in atmospheric pressure, humidity, or even subtle vibrations from large crowds of pilgrims could influence when the moisture finally emerges. So we are left with two parallel truths existing in the same space. One is a measurable physical explanation of water, minerals, and stone. The other is a deep, centuries-old spiritual belief that the sacred site is alive with meaning and message. For the pilgrim touching the damp stone, the scientific explanation does not diminish the experience, it often enriches it. The very earth of Jerusalem is participating in the moment, its ancient geology responding to the weather and the seasons. Whether seen as a sign from heaven or a whisper from the earth itself, the phenomenon of the weeping stones transforms a historical monument into a conversation. It asks every observer the same question: is the wall crying because of what happens before it, or are we more moved to tears because we believe it can? A stone that promises the power of persuasive speech sits wedged high in the battlements of an Irish castle. This is the Blarney Stone, and to receive its legendary gift of eloquence, you must perform a daring act. You must lie on your back, lean dangerously backwards over a sheer drop, and kiss the cold, weathered limestone while helpers hold your legs. It is a ritual of trust and a little madness, all for the promise of the gift of Gab. The stone itself, set into the wall far below the castle's parapet walk, seems unremarkable. Yet for centuries, people have pilgrimaged to Blarney Castle in County Cork to undertake this vertigo-inducing tradition. The reward, they say, is not just smooth talking, but a particular Irish form of clever, flattering, and beguiling speech known as Blarney, the ability to charm and persuade without ever quite committing to the truth. But where did this speaking stone come from? Its origins are a tapestry of tall tales, each more colorful than the last. One popular legend ties it to Scottish royalty, claiming it is a piece of the Stone of Scone, the sacred coronation stone of Scottish kings, brought to Ireland by a grateful noble. Another story spins a more magical yarn. It tells of an old woman, a witch, who was saved from drowning by the Lord of Blarney. In gratitude, she revealed the secret of a stone in the castle walls that would grant the gift of eloquent speech to anyone who kissed it. This blend of history and folklore is the stone's true voice. It speaks not through sound, but through the actions and stories it inspires. The very concept of Blarney entered the language because of Queen Elizabeth I's frustration with the then Lord of Blarney, Cormac Tage McCarthy. He was a master of writing long, flattering letters full of loyalty and promises, yet he consistently avoided actually submitting to her authority. Exasperated, the Queen is said to have declared his correspondence was all Blarney, meaning pleasant talk with no real substance. The stone, therefore, became the physical symbol of this clever, evasive, and charming form of communication. It is a stone that speaks through the people who kiss it, transforming them into storytellers and persuaders. The tradition itself is a form of conversation with history, a physical connection to a legacy of wit and wordplay. So while you will never hear the Blarney Stone utter a word, its influence is heard in every toast, every negotiation, every clever turn of phrase credited to those who dared the backwards kiss. It reminds us that sometimes a stone's greatest power is not in what it says, but in what it inspires us to say. The gift of eloquence from a single stone is one thing, but an entire island of silent, staring giants presents a far grander and more haunting mystery. Far out in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, on the remote island known as Rapa Nui, stand the Moai. These are not just heads, but colossal full-body statues carved from volcanic tuff, some towering over 30 feet tall and weighing more than 80 tons. Their stern, elongated faces gaze inland with a profound and unsettling silence, their backs perpetually turned to the sea. For centuries, their mute presence has begged the same urgent questions. Who built them? How did they move these monoliths across miles of rugged terrain? And most importantly, what were they meant to say? The most tantalizing clue lies not in the stone giants themselves, but in a fragile, parallel artifact. Scattered across the island are wooden tablets inscribed with glyphs, a writing system known as rongorongo. The symbols are beautiful and complex, featuring human forms, animals, and geometric shapes. Yet to this day, no one has definitively cracked their code. It is a lost language carved in wood, a potential instruction manual or history book for a civilization that fell silent. Some researchers believe rongorongo was a form of proto-writing used for sacred chants or genealogical records. Its undeciphered state means the Moai's creators might have left us a direct message, but we lack the key to hear their voices. This profound silence leads us back to the statues. If they could not write their purpose for us, perhaps they were built to speak to someone or something else. One prevailing theory suggests the Moai were not gods but deified ancestors. Each statue or eringa aura, which translates to living face, may have represented a specific, powerful lineage chief. By carving their likeness in eternal stone and placing them on ceremonial platforms called who facing the villages, the living community could perpetually bask in the protective gaze and spiritual power or mana of their forebears. The statues were conduits, a stone bridge between the living and the dead. Their silent faces a constant, watchful presence. Another theory posits they were territorial markers, stone declarations of power and resource control for different island clans. The sheer effort required to quarry, carve, and transport a moai was a spectacular display of a clan's wealth, manpower, and divine favor. A larger, more perfectly crafted statue on a more elaborate who was a billboard in stone, broadcasting a clear message of dominance to rival groups. Their placement was their voice, a permanent shout across the landscape. This brings us to the island's most enduring practical mystery: how were they moved? Oral tradition recorded by early European visitors tells a captivating story. Islanders describe the statues walking themselves to their platforms, guided by the spiritual power of a chief or priest. Modern experiments have shown this legend might hold a kernel of physical truth. Using teams of people and ropes, researchers have demonstrated a method where the statue is rocked side to side and walked forward in a shuffling motion. The process, accompanied by rhythmic chants and coordinated pulls, would make the giant appear to amble upright across the land, a mesmerizing spectacle that perfectly explains the walking legend. Whether walked, rolled on logs, or slid on lubricated paths, the movement of a moai was undoubtedly a communal, ritualized event, a conversation between the people and the stone that transformed geology into genealogy. So what message were the moai meant to convey? They speak of a society capable of breathtaking artistic and engineering feats, deeply connected to their ancestors and their environment. But they also tell a cautionary tale of a civilization that may have pushed its isolated island home beyond its ecological limits in the pursuit of this monumental expression. The moai stand as a powerful, silent sermon in stone, a reminder that our most ambitious monuments are often conversations with our own past and our future, declarations of who we are that long outlast the voices that created them. A guardian of stone has watched the desert sunrise for thousands of years, its silent gaze holding a question older than history itself. The Great Sphinx of Giza, carved from the living bedrock of the Giza Plateau, is a monolithic mystery. With the body of a lion and the head of a pharaoh, traditionally believed to represent Khufu, it is the world's largest and perhaps most famous sculpture. But in ancient Greek mythology, the Sphinx was not silent at all. It was a terrifying creature with a woman's head, a lion's body, and wings who guarded the entrance to the city of Thebes. To any traveler who wished to pass, she posed a famous and deadly riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? Those who could not answer were strangled and devoured. The hero Oedipus finally solved it, replying, "A man who crawls as a baby, walks upright in adulthood, and uses a cane in old age." Upon hearing the correct answer, the mythological Sphinx destroyed herself. This story, though from a different culture and a later time, attached a powerful idea to the stone colossus in Egypt, the idea of a speaking guardian that tests the wisdom of those who approach. It gave the Sphinx a legendary voice, one that speaks in puzzles and enigmas. This metaphorical voice echoes into the modern era, where the Sphinx's greatest riddles are not of myth, but of geology, archaeology, and time. The most persistent whispers surround what might lie beneath its massive paws. For over a century, researchers and explorers have theorized about possible hidden chambers or tunnels within or under the Sphinx. Early accounts by travelers like the Roman historian Pliny the Elder mentioned a hollow chamber in the Sphinx's head, though this is likely a reference to a small, known cavity. The real speculation ignited in the late 20th century. Geological surveys and seismic studies have, at times, suggested the presence of anomalies, cavities, or chambers in the bedrock beneath or around the monument. These findings are often hotly debated within the scientific community, with many archaeologists cautioning that natural fissures in the limestone bedrock can easily be mistaken for man-made rooms. Yet the theories persist, fueled by a deep human curiosity. Could there be a hall of records, as some have proposed, a hidden library containing the lost knowledge of a civilization far older than dynastic Egypt, perhaps even the mythical Atlantis? This idea suggests the Sphinx is not just a guardian of a pharaoh's tomb complex, but a sentinel for an entire forgotten chapter of human history, its true message buried and waiting. While mainstream Egyptology finds little evidence for such a library, the power of the idea is undeniable. It transforms the Sphinx from a static statue into a keeper of secrets, a stone with a story it has not yet told. Its voice, then, is the collective hum of our own unanswered questions. Each new geological scan, each examination of its deeply weathered flanks, is an attempt to listen, to coax a reply from the stone. Is the erosion on its body from wind and sand, as most geologists assert, or could it be the mark of much older water erosion, hinting at a date thousands of years earlier than the standard timeline? The debates themselves are the Sphinx's ongoing riddle. It speaks not with words, but through the mysteries of its construction, its alignment, and its profound, enduring presence. To stand before it is to feel the weight of its silence, a silence so deep it seems to contain every question we have ever asked about our own past. The Sphinx's true voice may not be a sound, but the compelling urge it creates in us to seek, to question, and to imagine what messages from the dawn of time might still be locked within the earth. While the Sphinx guards its secrets in stoic silence, another desert landscape holds stones that tell their story through motion. In the heart of Death Valley, California, lies a place of profound emptiness called the Racetrack Playa. This is a dry lake bed, a vast, flat expanse of cracked mud so level and featureless it feels like another planet. Scattered across this barren floor are hundreds of rocks, from small pebbles to hefty boulders weighing over 700 pounds. And behind them, etched into the mud as clearly as pen on paper, are long, meandering trails. These are the sailing stones, and for most of the 20th century, their movement was one of geology's greatest puzzles. No one had ever seen them move. They would sit still for years, then a new trail would appear, sometimes straight, sometimes curving sharply, even crossing the paths of other stones. It was as if the rocks had decided to go for a solitary stroll in the dead of night. The theories were as wild as the landscape. Some suggested powerful, localized magnetic fields were pulling them. Others whispered of supernatural forces, desert spirits, or the playful tricks of ancient earth energies. The most persistent legend spoke of a deep, grinding roar that could be heard on still nights, the sound of the stones scraping their way across the playa, a ghostly conversation between rock and earth. The mystery endured because the conditions for movement were so specific and rarely witnessed. The solution, when it finally came, was both elegantly simple and visually spectacular. Scientists meticulously monitored the playa, planting GPS trackers in stones and setting up time-lapse cameras. They discovered that the magic formula required a rare and perfect sequence of events. First, winter rains must fall on the playa, creating a shallow, temporary lake. Then, on cold desert nights, this thin sheet of water must freeze into large, windowpane-like sheets of ice. But the ice cannot be too thick. As the sun rises and temperatures climb, the ice sheets begin to break up. A light wind, just strong enough to catch the edges of these floating panes, pushes them across the shallow meltwater. And if a stone is nestled in the ice's path, the pane bumps into it, surrounding it, and then ever so slowly, the wind-driven ice pushes the rock along the soft, slick mud below. The movement is incredibly slow, just a few inches per minute, but over hours it creates those iconic, graceful trails. The roaring sound from the legends likely finds its truth here as well. On a quiet morning, the sound of these vast, thin sheets of ice cracking, grinding together, and scraping over the mud and stones would be a symphony of deep groans and sharp reports, echoing across the empty basin. It would truly sound as if the landscape itself were alive and moving. So the stones of the Racetrack Playa do speak, but not with a supernatural voice. They tell a story written in mud, a narrative of water, ice, and wind. Their trails are a record of delicate, ephemeral desert physics, a reminder that even the most inanimate objects are part of a dynamic conversation with their environment. The mystery was not a haunting, but a beautiful, natural process waiting patiently for us to learn its language. The desert's silent ballet gives way to a symphony carved in stone. In the ruins of Hampi, the ancient capital of the Vijayanagara Empire in southern India, the Vitala temple holds an architectural wonder that seems to defy the very nature of rock. Here in a grand hall stand clusters of slender, intricately carved pillars. To the eye, they are masterpieces of sculpture depicting gods, goddesses, and mythical creatures. But their true magic is not in how they look, but in how they sound. These are the musical pillars of Hampi. When tapped gently with a thumb, each pillar emits a clear, resonant note, a distinct musical tone as pure as if it came from a carefully tuned instrument. Some pillars ring out the deep, melodic scales of classical Indian music, mimicking the sounds of traditional instruments like the veena, the mridangam, or bells. It is a stone orchestra waiting for the slightest touch to begin its performance. The engineering behind this phenomenon is as beautiful as the music itself. Each main pillar is not a single block, but a central column surrounded by a group of smaller, supporting shafts, all carved from a single, massive piece of granite. These smaller shafts are of varying thicknesses and lengths, and they are carefully spaced from the central core. This design is the secret. When struck, these slender, freestanding shafts vibrate at their own specific frequencies. The solid granite core acts as a resonator, amplifying the sound and giving it that rich, bell-like clarity. The ancient sculptors were not just artists, they were master acousticians, understanding the harmonic properties of stone on an intuitive, genius level. They literally composed music into the architecture. So what was the purpose of this stone symphony? The Vitala temple was a center for art, music, and dance dedicated to Lord Vishnu. The most compelling theory is that these pillars were an integral part of ritual and worship. Imagine a ceremony taking place in this hall. Priests or temple musicians could move between the pillars, tapping them in sequence to create melodic accompaniments for chants, prayers, or sacred dances. The music would not come from human-made instruments, but from the temple itself, as if the gods were using the very building to join in the devotion. It transforms the space from a static place of worship into a participatory, resonant instrument. The pillars do not just represent music, they are music frozen in granite and released by human touch. This idea of stone speaking through harmonic resonance is a profound conversation between human intention and natural material. The sculptors listened to the stone, understood its latent voice, and through unimaginable skill liberated that voice. Each tap is a question, and each clear, ringing note is the pillar's ancient reply. To stand in that hall and hear the soft, metallic chimes ripple through the quiet air is to witness a miracle of both art and science. It proves that some stones were not meant to be silent monuments, but active participants in human culture, their voices tuned to the divine. Granite can sing, but in the English countryside, limestone conspires. On the border between Oxfordshire and Warwickshire, the rollright stones hold a quiet power. The main circle, known as the King's Men, stands as a classic, if weathered, Neolithic monument. But a short distance away, a small huddle of 5 stones tells a far more dramatic story. These are the Whispering Knights. Local legend does not see them as mere markers or monuments, but as petrified traitors, frozen forever in a moment of treachery. The tale goes that a local king, intent on conquering all of England, marched his army to this ridge. He was confronted by a witch who issued a challenge. She told him, if you can take 7 long strides and see the village of Long Compton, you shall be king of England. Confident, the king took his 7 strides, but a mound of earth, raised by the witch's magic, blocked his view. With a cackle, she pronounced her curse. The king and his entire army were turned to stone where they stood. the main circle became the king's men, a solitary stone across the field became the king's stone, and his closest knights, caught whispering a plot against him just before the curse fell, became the Whispering Knights. The magic of this story lies in its insistence that the petrification was not complete. Folklore claims that on Midsummer's Eve, when the veil between worlds is thin, the stones return to life. The king's men dance in their circle, the king's stone nods its head, and the Whispering Knights, those petrified conspirators, resume their hushed, treasonous conversation. To visit the site on a still evening is to feel the weight of that legend. The knights are not standing in a neat pattern, but leaning in toward one another, their shapes eroded into hunched, cloaked forms. The space between them feels intimate, secretive. It is easy to imagine them with their heads together, plotting in urgent whispers as the fatal curse sweeps over the hill. The wind, funneling through the gaps in the ancient limestone, creates a soft, sighing sound. If you listen with the story in your mind, it does not take much to hear it as the murmur of distant voices, the faint rustle of conspiratorial speech. This is how a landscape speaks through story. The physical oddity of the stones, their peculiar grouping away from the main circle, demanded an explanation. The human mind, encountering something so old and mysterious, weaves a narrative to give it meaning, to make the silent stones characters in a timeless drama. The enduring power of the Whispering Knights is not in any proven acoustic phenomenon, but in the collective act of listening. For centuries, people have come to this spot and chosen to hear more than the wind. They have heard a fragment of a frozen moment, a story of ambition, betrayal, and magical justice that gives voice to the voiceless stones. It is a reminder that sometimes the most compelling messages from the past are not carved in inscriptions, but whispered into the spaces between what we see and what we believe. A silent slab of black granodiorite, unearthed by French soldiers in 1799, would become the most important key ever found. The Rosetta Stone was not a monument to a king or a marker for the gods. It was a bureaucratic decree, a copy of a priestly agreement carved in 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, and Egyptian hieroglyphs, to ensure everyone in Ptolemaic Egypt could read it. For centuries, hieroglyphs were considered a sacred, magical script, their meaning lost to time. Scholars believed each symbol represented a whole idea or object, a beautiful but impenetrable mystery. The Rosetta Stone changed everything by presenting the same message in a known language, ancient Greek, alongside the unknown ones. It was a stone that offered its own translation, a linguistic bridge across 2,000 years. But building that bridge took more than 20 years of fierce intellectual struggle. The initial assumption was that the hieroglyphic section was a direct, symbol-for-word translation of the Greek. This proved to be a dead end. The breakthrough came from a young French scholar named Jean-François Champollion, a linguistic prodigy obsessed with ancient Egypt. He focused not on the beautifully carved royal cartouches, the oval frames that enclosed royal names. Champollion theorized that within those cartouches, the symbols might not represent ideas but sounds, spelling out the names of foreign rulers like Ptolemy and Cleopatra using phonetic signs. He compared the Greek names on the Rosetta Stone with the hieroglyphs in the corresponding cartouches, painstakingly matching sound to symbol. When he successfully applied his phonetic theory to a cartouche for the name Ramesses, a pharaoh from a much earlier dynasty not on the Rosetta Stone, he knew he had cracked the code. He reportedly ran into his brother's office, shouted, "I've got it," and then collapsed in a dead faint for 5 days. The stone had finally spoken. Its voice was not a single proclamation, but a floodgate opening. Champollion's work, built upon the foundation of the Rosetta Stone, did not just translate one text, it gave a voice back to an entire civilization. Suddenly, the walls of temples and tombs covered in millions of carved characters were no longer silent art. They were historical records, religious hymns, legal documents, and personal stories. We could hear the boasts of pharaohs, the prayers of priests, and the mundane accounts of grain harvest. The stone itself was the facilitator, the physical object that allowed a dead language to be resurrected. Its discovery was an accident of war, its decipherment a triumph of human curiosity and intellect. Today, it sits in the British Museum, one of the most visited objects on Earth. People crowd around its glass case not just to see a famous rock, but to pay homage to a key. It is the ultimate talking stone because it taught us how to listen to everything else. The Rosetta Stone gave voice to an empire, but one man in 20th century Florida claimed a stone's song taught him to move mountains. Edward Leedskalnin was a 5-foot-tall, 100-pound Latvian immigrant, heartbroken after his young fiancée called off their wedding just days before the ceremony. He spent the next 28 years on a lonely plot of land near Homestead, Florida, performing what seems like an impossible feat. Working entirely alone, mostly at night, he quarried, carved, and positioned over 1,100 tons of massive coral rock blocks. He built walls, a 2-story tower, a 9-ton gate that a child can push open, a Polaris telescope, and furniture all from solid stone, creating the fantastical structure known as Coral Castle. He did this with no modern machinery, no large crew, and no formal engineering training. When asked how he managed it, his explanations were cryptic. He said he had rediscovered the building secrets of the ancient Egyptians and the pyramid builders, and he often stated simply that he understood the laws of weight and leverage. But the most intriguing clue he ever offered was that the stones themselves sang to him. He claimed that by listening, he could sense their natural balance points, finding the precise spot where their immense weight could be coaxed into motion. This was not a metaphor for artistic inspiration, but a literal description of his process. He built his own tools from old car parts and telephone poles, using a system of chains, blocks, and tripods. Witnesses who occasionally spied on him reported seeing the massive blocks seemingly floating through the air, as if they were as light as helium balloons. Leedskalnin insisted it was all simple physics, a matter of placing the fulcrum in exactly the right place. Yet the precision of his work defies that simple explanation. The 9-ton revolving gate, for instance, is so perfectly balanced on a simple truck bearing that it moves with a gentle push, and it fits so tightly in its frame that for decades no one could find the pivot point. His stone astronomical instruments track celestial movements with accuracy. How could one man with rudimentary tools achieve such perfection? The groaning, singing sound he described might have been the key. Some modern theorists suggest Leedskalnin had stumbled upon a profound practical application of acoustic levitation, the use of sound waves to neutralize or manipulate gravity. While this remains in the realm of speculative physics, it aligns with his own strange claims. The singing may have been the sound of the coral rock under stress as he applied leverage, a resonant frequency that told him he was on the right track. Or perhaps it was the sound of his primitive chain hoists and metal tools straining against the incredible weight, a mechanical symphony that he learned to interpret like a language. Today, Coral Castle stands as his monument, a stone garden that continues to speak. Its voice is one of enduring mystery and human obsession. It asks us how much one determined person can truly accomplish, and whether there are lost principles of physics, simple secrets of balance and resonance that our modern technology has overlooked. Walking among the towering coral walls, you are not just looking at sculpture, you are listening to a silent lecture in megalithic engineering, delivered by a heartbroken man who insisted the stones themselves taught him their secrets. From a single man's whispered conversation with coral rock, we journey to an empire's formal dialogue with the divine. In the fertile plains of the Yellow River Valley, over 3,000 years ago, the kings of the Shang dynasty faced countless uncertainties, from the outcome of battles and the health of the royal family to the prospects of the harvest and the proper timing for rituals. Their method for seeking answers did not involve towering monuments, but something far more intimate, the cracked shells of turtles and the shoulder bones of oxen. These are the oracle bones, and they represent the earliest known form of Chinese writing, a direct transcription of questions posed to the spirit world. The process was a sacred ritual. A diviner, often the king himself, would prepare a carefully cleaned turtle plastron, the flat underside of the shell, or the broad, flat scapula of an ox. Onto this bone surface, they would inscribe a specific question using a sharp tool. The inscription might read, "Will the king's child be a son?" or "In the next 10 days, will there be any misfortune?" Then, applying intense heat from a red-hot bronze rod to hollows carved on the reverse side, the bone would stress and crack with a sharp popping sound. That sound was considered the voice of the ancestors or the high god Shangdi responding, but the message was in the pattern. The diviner would then interpret the shape and direction of the cracks that appeared on the front, reading them as a positive, negative, or conditional answer from the other side. The bone itself became the record of this celestial conversation. After the divination, the date, the topic, the diviner's name, and sometimes even the actual outcome were often carved right next to the original crack. This is what makes them so extraordinary. They are not just mystical objects, they are historical documents. The inscriptions on these bones are the direct ancestors of modern Chinese characters. We can see the pictographic origins of words for sun, moon, mountain, and rain, as well as more abstract concepts. They give us the names of Shang kings, details of military campaigns, descriptions of rituals, and even accounts of astronomical events like eclipses. For centuries, these bones were lost to history, sometimes ground up and used in traditional medicine as dragon bones. Their rediscovery and decipherment in the late 19th century was a revolution as profound as the cracking of the Rosetta Stone. Suddenly, the Shang dynasty moved from semi-legendary myth into the clear light of verified history. Each fragment is a frozen moment of anxiety and hope, a king leaning close to hear the future in the split second a bone fractures. They are perhaps the most literal speaking stones of all, their voices etched permanently beside the very cracks that formed their answers. The intimate crack of an oracle bone speaks of a conscious question seeking an answer. But what if stone could record events without any intent, capturing moments of raw emotion like a geological tape recorder? This idea forms the heart of a fascinating modern legend, the stone tape theory. It proposes that certain materials, especially quartz-rich stones like granite or sandstone, can act like natural recording devices. During moments of intense emotional energy, such as trauma, terror, or ecstasy, the theory suggests the very rock might absorb and store a psychic impression of the event. Then, under the right conditions, like specific humidity, temperature, or even the presence of a sensitive individual, that stored impression could be replayed. It is a speculative blend of geology and paranormal psychology, a scientific myth for the age of technology, attempting to explain why some ancient places feel so profoundly haunted. The classic examples are places steeped in historical violence or high emotion. Visitors to old castles or ancient battlefields sometimes report more than just a feeling. They describe hearing phantom sounds, the clang of swords, distant screams, or the murmur of crowded voices with no visible source. At the Tower of London, for instance, countless reports over centuries speak of hearing the ghostly footsteps of executed prisoners or the wails of those tortured in its dungeons. On the windswept fields of Culloden in Scotland, site of a brutal 18th century battle, people have claimed to hear the muffled sounds of conflict, the groan of the wounded, and the eerie skirl of ghostly bagpipes. Traditional ghost stories attribute these sounds to restless spirits. The stone tape theory offers an alternative and, in some ways, a more haunting explanation. It suggests the stones of the tower or the very soil of the battlefield witnessed those terrible moments. The sheer terror and pain of the events, the theory goes, imprinted themselves onto the crystalline structure of the quartz in the environment, creating a permanent, if faint, recording. Modern visitors, particularly those who are psychically sensitive or simply in a receptive state of mind, might then unconsciously trigger a playback of that ancient emotional residue. The stone is not haunted by a soul, but by an echo. While mainstream science dismisses the theory for lacking a verifiable mechanism, its power lies in its metaphorical resonance. It gives a form of agency and memory to the landscape itself. It suggests that our most traumatic histories do not simply vanish, they seep into the foundations of the places where they occurred. The stones become archives of anguish, libraries of lost moments, waiting for someone to tune into their frequency. This idea transforms every ancient ruin from a silent relic into a potential repository of unseen drama. Whether you view it as pseudoscience or a profound poetic truth, the stone tape theory reframes how we listen to old places. It asks us to consider that the chill in a castle corridor might not be a draft, but the replay of a centuries-old fear, and that the strange acoustics of a stone circle might hold more than just the wind. They might hold the whispers of the past still vibrating in the quartz. Far from the emotional echoes of haunted stones, a different kind of narrative stands clear and deliberate under the Scandinavian sky. On the Swedish island of Gotland, scattered across farms and churchyards, lie hundreds of picture stones. These are not rough, rune-covered monoliths, but broad, flat slabs of local limestone, carved with intricate, swirling images that pull you into another world. Created during the Viking Age from about the 5th to the 11th centuries, they are visual epics etched in stone. While rune stones speak through text, often stating simply who raised the stone and in whose memory, the picture stones tell their stories without a single written word. They speak a universal language of symbol and scene. The most striking feature is the dominant, majestic ship. With its high, curved prow and stern, often filled with armed warriors, the ship sails across the stone's face. This is not just a mode of transport, it is the central metaphor of Norse life and afterlife. It represents the journey, whether across the seas for trade or raid, or the final voyage of the deceased to the realm of the gods. The imagery surrounding these ships is a dense tapestry of Norse belief. You might see a warrior being welcomed by a Valkyrie into the halls of Valhalla, a scene of epic battle, or intricate interlaced patterns symbolizing the web of fate woven by the Norns. Later stones, influenced by growing Christian contact, begin to blend these pagan motifs with crosses and biblical scenes, creating a unique visual record of a culture in transition. Their function was deeply memorial. A family would commission a stone to honor a lost loved one, often placing it near a burial mound or a place of significance. But this was more than a gravestone. It was a public declaration of legacy. The images broadcast the virtues of the deceased, a hero welcomed by the gods, a successful trader whose ship returned laden, a warrior who died with honor. For a largely illiterate society, these stones were a communal storybook. People would gather around them, and the carved scenes would prompt the recitation of sagas, the recounting of genealogies, and the sharing of myths. The stone itself was the anchor for oral history, its images serving as memory cues for the storyteller. In this way, the picture stones did not just depict stories, they actively generated speech. They ensured that the deeds of the dead and the values of the living were spoken aloud for generations. To stand before one today is to witness a frozen moment of Viking consciousness, a bold attempt to make memory permanent. The wind may whistle over the limestone, but the true voice of these stones is in the silent, vivid shout of their imagery, an invitation to imagine the tales that once brought their carved heroes to life. The vivid stories carved into Viking picture stones celebrate legacies meant to last forever. But in the highlands of Western Kenya, a different stone tells a story of grief that refuses to end. Near the town of Kisii stands a remarkable geological formation known locally as Iwo Ilo, the Crying Stone. It is a towering pillar of rock with a large, rounded boulder balanced precariously atop a narrower column. From a distance, the silhouette is unmistakable. It looks like a shrouded human figure, and down the face of this stone every single day water flows in continuous vertical streams. These are not seasonal trickles, they are perpetual tears cutting dark, damp tracks through the lichen and moss. For the local Kisii community, this is not a random act of nature. It is a monument to a profound and timeless sorrow. Their legend explains the stone's origin with a heartbreaking tale. Long ago, a woman from the community was returning from the market with her daughter when they were caught in a sudden, devastating hailstorm. The mother, trying desperately to shield her child, was struck and killed by the ice. The daughter, overcome with unimaginable grief, could not move on. She sat down beside her mother's body and wept until her tears turned to stone. The formation is said to be that petrified daughter, forever crying for her lost parent, her eternal tears now flowing from the rock itself. This story gives meaning to the inexplicable, transforming a geological oddity into a sacred memorial. The stone is more than a landmark, it is a spiritual site. Community elders visit Iwo Ilo to pray and make offerings, seeking blessings or intervention from the ancestors. It is seen as a direct conduit to the spiritual world, a place where human emotion has literally become part of the landscape. But the stone's voice is also deeply practical. For generations, farmers in the region have watched the crying stone closely, believing it to be a reliable predictor of weather. The legend holds that when the stone's tears flow heavily, it foretells coming rains, a blessing for the crops. If the streams diminish or dry up significantly, a period of drought is expected. This observation likely has a basis in the very geology that creates the phenomenon. The stone is part of a water catchment area sitting atop an underground aquifer. The weeping is caused by a natural spring high up in the formation where water seeps out through porous rock and runs down the face. The volume of this flow is directly tied to the water table, which rises after heavy rains and falls during dry seasons. So the stone is, in a very real sense, a giant, ancient rain gauge. Its increased tears signal a saturated aquifer, promising more water in the near future, while its diminished weeping warns of depleted reserves. This intertwining of myth and meteorology shows a deep, attentive relationship with the environment. The community did not see a random rock, they saw a participant in their world, a stone that communicated through its tears. It spoke of shared loss through legend and of collective survival through its predictions. To stand before Iwo Ilo is to witness a conversation between earth and sky, mediated by human story. The stone cries, and for centuries people have been there to listen, to interpret, and to remember why. Grief can turn to stone, but stone can also turn to song. In the lush, misty central highlands of Vietnam, archaeologists have unearthed a different kind of speaking stone, one that communicates not through legend or inscription, but through pure, resonant music. These are the ancient lithophones, sets of carefully tuned stone slabs that are among the oldest musical instruments ever discovered. Imagine a series of long, flat stones, some over 3 feet in length, shaped from a dense, sonorous rock like basalt. They are not haphazard rocks, but precision instruments. Each slab is a different size and thickness, and when suspended or placed on supports and struck with a mallet, each one rings out with a distinct, clear musical note. Arranged in order, they form a complete stone xylophone, capable of producing melodies and complex rhythms. The oldest of these lithophones date back an astonishing 5,000 years, placing their creation in the Neolithic period, long before the rise of most known civilizations. This fact is breathtaking. It means that while some cultures were erecting silent standing stones, the people of this region were composing harmonies from the earth itself. The craftsmanship reveals a profound acoustic intelligence. The makers had to select the right kind of stone, one that could produce a clean, sustained tone without cracking. They then shaped each slab, painstakingly testing and adjusting its dimensions to hone its specific pitch, a process requiring an incredibly refined ear and immense patience. This was not a random discovery, it was a deliberate technological and artistic achievement. But what was the purpose of this stone symphony? Given their age and the context of their discovery, most researchers believe these lithophones were sacred instruments, central to community ritual and spiritual life. In a world where spirits were believed to inhabit the landscape, what better way to communicate with them than through the voice of the earth? The music produced would have been otherworldly, a deep, ringing, metallic sound unlike anything made from wood or hide. It would have filled ceremonial spaces with a vibration that could be felt in the bones, creating an immersive, trance-like atmosphere for rituals aimed at healing, celebrating harvests, or honoring the dead. The stones were not just played, they were conversed with. Each strike was a call, and each resonant ring was the stone's reply, a direct dialogue between human intention and mineral essence. These instruments let the stones speak in the universal language of melody and rhythm, turning the solid, immutable earth into a participant in human emotion and ceremony. To hear a replica of a lithophone played today is to be transported. The sound is haunting and beautiful, a tangible thread connecting us to those ancient musicians who first listened to the land and heard not just rock but a song waiting to be released. The music of ancient lithophones fades, leaving us in a landscape where stones are rumored not just to sing but to walk. While Stonehenge captures the world's imagination with its stark, dramatic silhouette, just 20 miles to the north lies a monument of a completely different character. Avebury is not a tidy circle of trimmed giants. It is a vast, sprawling complex, a Neolithic henge so enormous that an entire English village nestles within its embrace. Its ditch and bank enclose a space so large it feels like a precinct of the gods, and within and around it stand the remnants of what were once hundreds of massive, irregular sarsen stones. Unlike the precise lintels of Stonehenge, Avebury stones are untamed, their surfaces pitted and lumpy, looking less like architecture and more like ancient beings that simply settled where they stand. And local folklore insists they do not always stay settled. For centuries, stories have persisted that the stones of Avebury are not fixed. On certain nights, particularly Midsummer's Eve or under a winter moon, they are said to awaken. The most common legend describes them walking down the long slope to the nearby River Kennet to drink. Imagine the scene, the moonlight glinting off dozens of silent, hulking figures slowly processing across the dewy fields, bending to the water, then returning to their posts before dawn. Other tales suggest they move to dance or that they rearrange themselves when no one is looking, a silent, slow-motion game of musical chairs played over millennia. This belief in their mobility was so strong it directly influenced their fate. During the medieval period, many of the stones were toppled and buried by Christian communities seeking to neutralize what they saw as pagan idols. But the folklore suggests this was not just about religion, it was about fear. The stones were seen as animate, potentially malevolent, and burying them was a way to keep them in place to stop their nocturnal wanderings. The most chilling story that cemented this reputation dates to the 14th century. According to an account recorded by the antiquarian William Stukeley, a barber surgeon was in the village of Avebury when one of the massive stones, perhaps during an attempt to topple it, fell and crushed him to death. The stone reportedly landed on him in such a way that his body was trapped but not immediately discovered. The tale goes that his companions, a group of villagers or perhaps fellow workers, only realized his fate when they noticed a pool of blood seeping out from under the great stone's edge. This gruesome incident was not seen as a simple construction accident. In the minds of the local people, it was proof the stone had acted with intent. It was a vengeful, living entity that had killed a man. That specific stone, later known as the Barber Stone, became a focal point of dread, its weight forever associated with a deliberate act of violence. This legend speaks volumes about the human relationship with these megaliths. The sheer scale of Avebury, the apparent randomness of its layout, made it incomprehensible to later generations. The idea that our ancestors could have moved these 50-ton stones without modern technology seemed impossible, so the stories provided an explanation: the stones moved themselves. And the tragic death of the barber surgeon transformed that mystery into a morality tale, a warning to respect the old powers of the land. Today, as you walk among the few remaining giants of the Great Circle, the silence is profound. You can almost feel the weight of those stories in the air. The stones do look as if they have just paused, as if they might resume their journey the moment you look away. The legend of their movement is a testament to their power, a way for the human imagination to give agency to the inanimate, to hear in the rustle of the long grass the sound of stone feet slowly, patiently walking through time. The legends of wandering stones speak to a primal belief in the landscape's hidden life, but one stone's voice is believed to be a direct line to the divine. Embedded in the eastern corner of the Kaaba, the cube-shaped structure at the heart of the Grand Mosque in Mecca, is the Black Stone, or Al-Hajar al-Aswad. It is not a statue or an idol, but a sacred relic revered by millions. In Islamic tradition, this stone's story begins at the dawn of monotheism. It is said that the angel Gabriel gave the stone to the prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, as he and his son Ishmael were rebuilding the Kaaba, the first house of worship dedicated to the one God. The stone served as a celestial marker, a sign from heaven to sanctify the structure. But its most miraculous moment of speech came centuries later, according to Islamic narratives. Before the prophethood of Muhammad, peace be upon him, the various tribes of Mecca quarreled violently over who would have the honor of placing the black stone back into the Kaaba's wall after a reconstruction. The dispute threatened to erupt into bloodshed. They agreed to let the next person who entered the courtyard decide the matter. That person was Muhammad, then known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. His solution was one of brilliant diplomacy and unity. He spread his cloak on the ground, placed the stone upon it, and had a representative from each tribe lift a corner of the cloak together. They carried the stone to its place, and Muhammad himself then set it into the wall, satisfying all parties. In some accounts, it is said that the stone itself facilitated this moment. As the young Muhammad approached, the black stone is described as having glowed with a radiant light or having emitted a sound, a divine recognition of the future prophet who would unite the people under the worship of one God. This moment of recognition is its legendary voice, a silent testimony to faith. Today, the stone is seen not worshipped, but venerated as a tangible link to the prophets. It is now comprised of several fragments held together by a silver band, its surface worn smooth by the touch of countless hands across 14 centuries. During the Hajj pilgrimage, one of the rituals, known as Tawaf, involves circling the Kaaba 7 times. Pilgrims strive to kiss, touch, or gesture toward the black stone as they pass, emulating the actions of the Prophet. It is a physical connection to a sacred history, a silent stone that channels the prayers and devotion of billions. Its voice is not in words, but in the collective intention it gathers, a focal point for a global faith, whispering of unity, submission, and an unbroken chain back to the very beginning. Rising from the plains of Thessaly like a forest of stone giants, the pillars of Meteora defy the very logic of geology. These are not mere cliffs, but colossal, smooth-sided columns of rock, some towering over 1,200 feet into the sky, their summits broad and flat as if sliced by a divine blade. The name itself means suspended in the air, and to stand beneath them is to feel a profound sense of awe, as if the earth has thrust its fingers toward heaven. But local legend insists these formations were not always silent stone. An ancient story, passed down long before the first monasteries were built, tells a different origin. It says these immense pillars were once living giants, powerful sorcerers of the old world who roamed the land. They were beings of immense pride and earthly magic, their power rooted in the soil and the old gods. The tale goes that when the first Christian hermits arrived in this valley seeking solitude and communion with God, they were confronted by these formidable entities. The giants, seeing the humble monks as a threat, sought to drive them away, but the hermits did not fight with weapons. They fell to their knees in fervent prayer. And through the purity of their faith, a miracle occurred. The prayers of the devout acted as a counterspell, a divine force that overcame the sorcerer's earthly magic. Where the giants stood, their bodies turned to solid rock, frozen forever in their moment of defiance, their forms becoming the very pillars that now dominate the horizon. This legend is a powerful metaphor for the triumph of a new spiritual order over the old, a story written not on parchment but across an entire landscape. It transforms the geology from a random wonder into a narrative of petrified pride, a permanent reminder of a celestial victory. And then, centuries later, humans return to crown these petrified giants. Beginning in the 14th century, hermit monks, seeking the ultimate isolation to be closer to God, undertook a task that seems almost as miraculous as the legend itself. Using ropes, baskets, and nets, they scaled these sheer, impossible cliffs. They hauled timber and stone up hundreds of feet, and on the summits of these pillars, they built monasteries. From a distance, these architectural marvels appear to grow directly from the rock, like natural extensions of the stone. They are not just buildings perched on top, they are the crowns upon the heads of the petrified sorcerers. The monasteries of Meteora, like the great Meteoron and Varlom, seem to sanctify the very rock they stand upon, a physical declaration that this once mythical space is now a dwelling place for divine grace. The landscape itself completes the story. The silence at the top of a Meteora pillar is profound, broken only by the wind and the distant sound of bells. To look out from a monastery courtyard is to see a world divided between the earthly plains below and the heavenly realm of the rock towers. It feels like standing on an island in the sky, a place where prayer literally lifted humanity above the natural world. The legend and the reality intertwine perfectly. Whether you see the pillars as petrified sorcerers or miraculous geology, their ultimate purpose, as framed by human hands and faith, became the same: to elevate the spirit. The stones of Meteora speak through their staggering presence, a dual testimony to the power of myth to explain the unexplainable, and to the breathtaking ambition of faith, which can build sanctuaries in the sky upon the backs of ancient giants. From the sky-bound sanctuaries of Meteora, we descend to the rugged shores of the Viking world, where stones spoke with the clear, sharp voice of the rune master. Across Scandinavia, thousands of rune stones stand as permanent declarations, their surfaces carved not with pictures, but with an alphabet of angular characters designed to be cut into wood and stone. Each one is a frozen moment of speech, a voice from the 10th or 11th century saying, "Listen, I was here, and this is what happened." Their primary purpose was memorial. A family having lost a father, a son, or a husband would raise a stone to ensure the dead were not forgotten. The inscriptions follow a powerful, simple formula. They often begin by naming who raised the stone, then state in whose memory it stands, and finally, they proclaim the deeds or virtues of the deceased. A typical message might read, "Gunnar raised this stone in memory of Bjorn, his brother, a very good warrior." But these stones were far more than gravestones. They were land claims planted at property boundaries or crossroads to announce ownership to all who passed. They were records of immense pride, often detailing fantastic voyages. Some stones boast of men who went east with the Varangian Guard to Constantinople, or west to England, bringing back wealth and renown. The stone itself was the proof, a physical anchor for a family's reputation, ensuring their story was literally set in stone for the community to see and speak of for generations. The most politically powerful of all runestones are the Jelling stones in Denmark. Here, two massive runestones stand between two great burial mounds. The smaller, older stone was raised by King Gorm the Old in memory of his wife, Thyra, but it is the larger stone erected by his son, Harold Bluetooth, that truly changed history. Its inscription is a masterful piece of royal propaganda carved on 3 faces. It reads, "King Harold ordered this monument made in memory of Gorm, his father, and in memory of Thyra, his mother, that Harold who won for himself all of Denmark and Norway and made the Danes Christian." In just a few lines, Harold uses the stone to do 3 monumental things. He honors his parents, solidifying his dynastic legitimacy. He boasts of his military and political conquests, claiming 2 kingdoms. And he announces the most profound cultural shift of his reign, the forced conversion of his people to Christianity. This was not a private memorial, it was a public billboard carved in granite, a king using the most permanent medium available to shout his legacy across the centuries. The stone even bears one of the earliest known depictions of Christ in Scandinavia, intertwining the new faith with the old tradition of runic speech. By doing this, Harold Bluetooth transformed the very language of power. He took the familiar format of the rune stone, a tool for family memory, and repurposed it for the state. He made the stone speak for the crown, declaring that a new era had begun, 1 faith, 1 king, 1 kingdom. To stand before the gelling stone today is to witness the moment a nation found its voice, not on parchment, but in rock, a declaration so enduring it would become known as the baptismal certificate of Denmark. Harold Bluetooth's proclamation in stone was a deliberate act of power, but another set of stones whispers a mystery with no translation at all. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, the earth holds perfectly rounded secrets. These are the stone spheres, or Los Bolas, and to see one is to encounter something that feels impossibly manufactured. They are not boulders worn smooth by a river, they are deliberate geometric creations carved from hard granodiorite. Their sizes range from that of a melon to colossal orbs over 6 feet in diameter and weighing many tons, but it is their precision that truly stuns. Many of the spheres are near perfect in their roundness, with surface variations measured in mere millimeters. In a landscape of tangled vines and rough terrain, their smooth, mathematical perfection is utterly alien. They were crafted by a pre-Columbian people, likely ancestors of the Boruca culture, between 300 and 1500 AD, and then, for reasons unknown, they were left behind. Their original placements are mostly lost, as many were moved by 20th century plantations, but when discovered, they were often found in groups, arranged in lines, triangles, or parabolic curves. What were these silent, perfect orbs meant to say? The theories are as varied as they are compelling. Some researchers propose they were celestial tools, their alignments marking solstices, equinoxes, or significant star paths, turning entire landscapes into giant astronomical calendars. Others see them as territorial markers, denoting sacred spaces, burial sites, or the lands of powerful chiefs. Their sheer difficulty of creation made them ultimate status symbols, a display of a community's resources, time, and specialized knowledge. Moving a multi-ton sphere miles from its quarry was a statement in itself, yet the most haunting explanations come from the indigenous communities themselves. Local legends passed down through generations speak of the spheres as objects of magic. One story says they were made by the god of thunder and lightning, who used a giant blowpipe to shape them as weapons. Another claims they are the petrified eggs of a celestial dragon, or that they were gifts from the gods imbued with protective power. Most intriguingly, some traditions insist the spheres are not inert. They are said to contain a hidden essence, a consciousness, or a trapped secret. There are tales that on certain nights they glow with an inner light or hum with a low vibration. They were believed to be able to move on their own, rolling to new locations to guard a territory or signal a warning. These are not just fanciful stories, they are a cultural interpretation of the sphere's profound unnaturalness. To a people encountering them centuries after their makers vanished, their perfection suggested a non-human origin. They were objects so extraordinary that the only logical explanation was divine intervention or inherent magic. The spheres in this view are vessels holding unuttered knowledge, their smooth surfaces deliberately sealing in a message we can no longer access. Today, they sit in museum courtyards or in the quiet shade of banana plantations, their symmetry a silent rebuke to our understanding. They represent a conversation where we have only one side, the physical object. The intent, the ritual, the precise meaning of their arrangements are lost. We can measure their roundness, but we cannot hear the instructions given to the artisans. We can map their alignments, but we cannot understand the ceremony that took place among them. The stone spheres of Costa Rica are perhaps the purest form of a speaking stone, because they communicate only one thing with absolute clarity, that they have something important to say. Their voice is the frustrating, beautiful silence of a question carved in perfect geometry. Perfection in stone can be silent, but in a fortress in southern India, stone was engineered to shout. Golconda Fort is a sprawling citadel of granite, a maze of gates, halls, and ramparts that once protected the legendary diamond trade of the Deccan. Its walls have witnessed sieges and splendor, but its most astonishing feature is not something you see, it is something you hear. At the main Fete Darwaza gate, visitors are invited to perform a simple act: clap their hands. If you do, something miraculous happens. The sound of that single clap does not fade into the courtyard. It travels, it races up the steep stone pathways through the labyrinthine corridors and arrives crisp and clear at the highest point of the fort, the Royal Durbar Hall, nearly 1 kilometer away. It is as if the stone itself has learned to carry messages. This is not an accident of architecture, it is its masterstroke. The entire fort was designed as a giant acoustic amplification system. The builders of Golconda understood the physics of sound reflection with an almost preternatural skill. The angles of the massive arched gateways, the specific placement of stone slabs in the ceilings, the alignment of corridors and parapets, all were calculated to create a perfect sound channel. A clap at the entrance is captured and funneled upward, its echoes bouncing from one polished granite surface to the next without losing its distinct shape. In an age before electronic communication, this was a revolutionary security technology. A guard posted at the highest bastion could instantly be alerted to someone arriving at the main gate, simply by listening for the coded claps or specific spoken passwords that would carry up the hill. It was an early warning system made from rock and geometry, turning the entire mountain fortress into a living, listening entity. But the phenomenon feels like more than clever engineering. Standing in those stone passages, you get the eerie sensation that the walls are not just reflecting sound but remembering it. Whispers seem to linger in the corners, and the wind through the arches carries a murmur of centuries. Legends grew from this acoustic magic. It was said that secret conversations in the lowest chambers could be overheard by attentive ears at the very top, that the stones themselves gossiped. This gave the fort's rulers an aura of omniscience, as if the granite itself was their spy. The echoing walls of Golconda transform a static defense into a dynamic conversation across space. They prove that ancient builders could think in dimensions beyond the visual, weaving the very fabric of sound into their designs. To clap your hands at that gate is to participate in a centuries-old dialogue, to send your own small signal along a pathway of stone that has carried the whispers of kings, the alarms of gods, and the timeless secret that sometimes, to make a stone speak, you only need to know how to listen. A desert can become a page and a mountain slope a sentence. In the arid plains of southern Peru, the ancient Nazca people performed a breathtaking act of reverse sculpture. They did not pile stones up to speak, but carefully scraped them away. By removing the dark, sun-baked pebbles that carpet the desert floor, they exposed the lighter, chalky earth beneath. This process created lines, and those lines coalesced into shapes so vast they defy comprehension from the ground. A hummingbird with wings spanning over 300 feet. A spider with legs etched in perfect proportion. a condor, a monkey, a whale, and geometric shapes that stretch for miles across the pampa. These are the Nazca lines, a form of speech written not with ink but with the very skin of the earth. To stand beside one is to see only a shallow groove in the gravel, but from the air, the entire desert transforms into a colossal stone canvas, shouting its images into the empty sky. But who were these messages for, and what were they meant to say? The most enduring theory is that they were a direct line to the gods. In a landscape where water was life itself, the Nazca may have created these immense offerings to summon life-giving rain from the deities in the sky. The figures could represent totemic animals associated with water or fertility. The ritual act of walking the lines, perhaps in solemn processions, might have been a form of prayer, with the desert itself participating as a sacred diagram. By altering the earth on such a monumental scale, they were engaging in a conversation with the divine, using the only language grand enough to get a god's attention. Another compelling idea frames the lines as a giant astronomical calendar. Some researchers have noted alignments between certain lines and the rising or setting points of the sun, moon, and significant stars during solstices. The spider glyph, for instance, has been proposed to be a representation of the Orion constellation. In this view, the desert was an observatory and almanac, its markings helping to track celestial cycles crucial for planting and religious ceremonies. The lines were a practical, permanent record written across the land, a way for the stones and the soil to mark the passage of cosmic time. Perhaps the most immersive theory suggests the lines were ritual pathways themselves. Many of the designs are formed from a single, continuous line that never crosses itself, like a labyrinth. Archaeologists have found pottery shards and small offerings along some lines, hinting at ceremonial use. Imagine a community walking the outline of the hummingbird during a specific festival, following the curve of its beak and the sweep of its wings in a physical meditation. The act of tracing the glyph with their feet would have connected them to the symbol's power, making the abstract image a lived experience. The desert floor became a ceremonial arena, and the act of walking was the speech. This leads to the most haunting question of all: how did they design these perfect, massive forms without ever seeing them from above? The answer lies in a sophisticated understanding of scale and geometry. The Nazca likely created small-scale models first, then used a system of stakes and cords to transfer the proportions onto the vast desert canvas. They were master surveyors, using the clear, unchanging landscape as their grid. The precision of their work speaks of a deep, communal knowledge passed down through generations, a shared language of measurement and meaning. The true voice of the Nazca lines is in their staggering silence from the ground and their deafening presence from the air. They exist in that paradox. They were almost certainly meant to be seen not by human eyes, but by the eyes of the gods soaring above, or perhaps by the spirits of the ancestors in the sky. They transform a seemingly barren landscape into a testament of faith, a plea for survival, and a breathtaking work of art that only makes sense from a perspective the artists themselves could never physically achieve. They are a whisper in the sand that becomes a shout only when you are too far away to hear it, a reminder that some messages are written for viewers we can only imagine. The Nazca lines shout silently to the heavens, but another ancient structure may have been designed as a receiver. Within the suffocating darkness of the Great Pyramid's king's chamber, two narrow shafts, each no wider than a dinner plate, angle upwards through millions of tons of stone toward the outside world. For over a century, these were casually called air shafts, a simple label for a feature that is anything but simple. Mainstream Egyptology offers a functional, spiritual explanation. These shafts were not for physical air, but for spiritual breath. They are generally seen as symbolic pathways for the soul of the deceased pharaoh, Khufu. The southern shaft aimed directly at the constellation of Orion, associated with the god Osiris, lord of the afterlife. The northern shaft targeted the circumpolar stars, known as the imperishable ones, stars that never set, symbolizing eternal life. In this view, the pyramid was a machine of resurrection, and these stone-lined tunnels were launch ramps for the king's spirit, guiding it on its celestial journey to join the gods. It is a powerful, elegant theory rooted in the well-documented astronomical beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. Yet, the precision of these constructions ignites a more speculative flame. The shafts are engineering marvels, maintaining a perfect straight line through hundreds of feet of core masonry at precise angles. This accuracy suggests a purpose beyond the purely symbolic for some researchers. Alternative theories propose the pyramid was less a tomb and more a communication device, a stone book written in geometry and aligned with the cosmos. Could these shafts have been designed to channel something more than a soul? One provocative idea suggests they were conduits for energy, perhaps a form of cosmic or telluric force. The specific angles and the choice of materials, like the granite of the king's chamber, might have been intended to resonate with or collect energy from the stars they point toward, powering the pharaoh's spiritual transition or even affecting consciousness within the chamber. Another theory, far more fringe, imagines them as literal message receivers. If a specific star emitted a signal, whether divine or, in wilder speculations, extraterrestrial, these perfectly aligned stone tubes would have been the antennae, designed to capture and focus that transmission into the heart of the pyramid. The structure, in this reading, becomes less a silent monument and more an active listening post, a granite ear turned to the whispers of the Milky Way. The truth likely lies in the space between the scholarly and the speculative. The mainstream explanation is deeply satisfying because it connects to a coherent cultural and religious framework. The alternative theories, while often lacking Egyptological evidence, speak to the human urge to find active, technological purpose in such baffling precision. They ask us to listen harder to the silence. Perhaps the most compelling thought is that both ideas are facets of the same profound truth. For the ancient Egyptians, the spiritual was a form of energy, and a message from a star was the voice of a god. The shaft served a sacred function, whether we define it as symbolic or scientific. They transformed the static mass of the pyramid into a dynamic pointer, aligning a single point on Earth with specific points of light in the eternal sky. In that perfect alignment, the pyramid speaks its most enduring message, that humanity has always sought to place itself within a cosmic story, using the most permanent language we know, stone, to send our questions into the dark. The pyramid's silent alignment with the stars speaks of a cosmic conversation, but beneath the green hills of Britain, the earth itself is said to sigh. Scattered across the countryside are long barrows, ancient Neolithic tombs built from earth and stone over 5,000 years ago. To walk inside one, like West Kennet Long Barrow, is to step into a profound darkness. The air is cool and still, the only light slicing in from the entrance to illuminate massive sarsen stones that form the walls and chambers. This is a house for the dead, a permanent resting place constructed with immense care. And according to folklore that has clung to these sites for centuries, the dead are not always quiet. The most persistent legend claims that on certain nights, particularly Halloween or the old Celtic festival of Samhain when the veil between worlds is thin, these mounds emit sounds. It is not the clatter of bones or the chatter of ghosts, but something more elemental, a deep, resonant moan that seems to rise from the very soil and stone. Some describe it as a low hum, others as a sorrowful groan, as if the hill itself is breathing out a memory of grief. This phenomenon gave rise to their local names, the Moaning Barrows or the Singing Hills. Where could such a sound originate? One explanation lies in the geology and the weather. These mounds are not solid earth, they are complex structures with internal chambers and passages made of stone. On a windy night, air can be forced through tiny fissures in the capstones or whistled across the entrance facade. The entire mound can act like a giant, primitive wind instrument, its hollow interior and stone channels tuning the wind into a mournful drone. The sound is real, but its interpretation is where ancient belief takes over. For the people who built these tombs, they were far more than graves. They were portals, literal doorways to the otherworld, the realm of the ancestors and the spirits. The massive stones that lined the chambers and held up the earth were not just engineering, they were the guardians of this threshold. It was believed that the stones, having housed the physical remains of generations, could absorb something of their essence, their memory, or their voice. The sighs and groans heard on the wind were not random noise, but the stones speaking, releasing the accumulated whispers of those who rested within. This idea transforms the barrow from an archaeological site into a living entity. The stone itself becomes a repository, a recording medium for the presence of the dead. When the conditions are right, when the world of the living and the world of the spirit draw closest, the stone allows that presence to bleed through, not as an apparition, but as a sound, a vibration through the earth. This belief was so powerful it shaped behavior for millennia. Through the Roman era and into the Middle Ages, local communities often gave these mounds a wide berth after dark, treating them with a mixture of fear and reverence. They were places where you might hear the ancestors discussing old times, or where the land itself protested if disturbed. To stand in the central chamber of a long barrow today, you are surrounded by that layered history. You feel the weight of the earth above, the cool touch of stones placed by hands that understood the stars differently than we do. And if you are very still on a quiet, windy night, you might understand how the boundary between geology and story dissolves. The moan of the barrow is the sound of time passing, of wind moving through a human-made hollow, but it is also the echo of a 5,000-year-old idea that stone can remember, and that the landscape holds conversations we have only just forgotten how to hear. A riverbank in Massachusetts holds a stone that refuses to tell a simple story. Dighton Rock is an 11-foot-tall, 40-ton boulder of gray-brown sandstone, once partially submerged by the tides of the Taunton River. What makes it extraordinary is its face, covered from edge to edge in a dense, swirling tapestry of carved lines, geometric shapes, and what appear to be human figures, animals, and boats. For over 300 years, people have stood before this rock and seen entirely different histories. Some look at the jumble of lines and see a message from Phoenician sailors who crossed the Atlantic millennia before Columbus. Others discern Norse runes left by Viking explorers like Thorfinn Karlsefni. There are those who read it as a Portuguese declaration from the lost explorer Miguel Corte Real, and still others who see a simple, if elaborate, record left by indigenous peoples of the region. But one of the most captivating interpretations gives the stone a royal voice. Look closely, and you might see what some researchers have proposed, the clear outline of a man seated upon a throne. He wears a crown, holds a scepter, and is surrounded by symbols of authority. This, they argue, is no random graffiti, it is a king's proclamation. The stone chair of Dighton Rock in this reading is a sovereign act. It is a claim, by carving his image upon this prominent riverside stone, a visitor from across the ocean, perhaps a Norse chieftain or a Portuguese captain, was doing something profound. He was not just leaving a mark that he was here, he was symbolically taking possession of the land in the name of his god, his king, or his own authority. The rock itself becomes his throne, and the New World landscape his domain. This idea transforms the stone from a puzzle into a political statement, a piece of performative sovereignty etched in stone for the native peoples and any future European arrivals to see. The debate over its origins is a microcosm of a much larger struggle, the fight over who gets to write the first chapter of American history. For centuries, the dominant narrative insisted that American history began with Columbus in 1492, or perhaps with the Pilgrims in 1620. Dighton Rock, with its indecipherable and ancient-looking script, threatened that tidy timeline. If the carvings could be proven as pre-Columbian, it would shatter conventional narratives and suggest a far more complex, interconnected ancient world. This is why the rock became an ideological battleground. Every generation projected its own hopes and identities onto the weathered surface. Puritan settlers saw it as a divine sign meant for them. 19th century Romantic nationalists desperately wanted it to be Viking, to give America a heroic European pedigree deeper than the Spanish or English. Portuguese Americans championed their connection, and throughout, the voices of Native American scholars and communities offered a crucial perspective that the rock is likely a multi-layered palimpsest of indigenous art, added to over centuries by Algonquian peoples for whom the river was a central highway of life and spirit. The rock's true power may lie in this very ambiguity. It is a stone that claims many histories simultaneously. It speaks in a cacophony of projected voices, each trying to claim the rock, and by extension, the continent's origin story. The physical chair carved into its side, whether it represents a Norse king, a Portuguese noble, or an indigenous leader, is a powerful symbol. It reminds us that to sit in authority is to tell the story, and the first story told often becomes the one etched in stone. Dighton Rock, by stubbornly refusing to yield a single, clear translation, denies anyone that absolute authority. It stands as a monument not to one history, but to the human need to leave a mark to say, "I was here, this land heard my story." Its voice is the centuries-long argument it inspires, a conversation about memory, discovery, and who has the right to speak for the silent past. The arguments over a single stone's message reveal how deeply we crave a clear voice from the past. Yet sometimes the stones themselves provide the clarity, ringing out with a sound as pure as any bell. Scattered across the globe are geological anomalies known as ringing rocks or lithophones, boulder fields and solitary stones that defy our expectation of dull, silent rock. When struck with another stone or a hammer, they do not produce a muted thud. Instead, they ring with a clear, metallic chime, a resonant tone that can linger in the air like a struck gong. One of the most famous of these sites is the Ringing Rocks Park in Upper Black Eddy, Pennsylvania. Here, atop a barren, 7-acre boulder field, thousands of dark, igneous diabase rocks are piled high. Most appear utterly ordinary, but roughly a third of them possess this magical sonic property. Wander through this otherworldly landscape with a hammer in hand, and you become a musician of the earth. Tap one rock and it pings with a high note. Strike another a few feet away and it answers with a deeper tone. With enough patience, you can even play a simple melody on these ancient natural instruments. But the phenomenon is not unique to Pennsylvania. Similar ringing rock sites exist in locations as diverse as the outback of Australia, the mountains of Norway, and the deserts of the American Southwest. Even the iconic blue stones of Stonehenge, those smaller pillars transported over 150 miles from Wales, are rumored by some researchers to have lithophonic qualities. When tested, certain blue stones have been reported to produce a distinctive metallic clink, leading to speculative theories that their sonic property, not just their color, might have been a factor in their sacred selection and epic journey. This idea suggests Stonehenge could have been, in part, a monumental stone orchestra, its pillars chosen for their voices as much as their appearance. The practical use of such stones in the ancient world is evident. We have already seen the crafted lithophones of Vietnam, but naturally occurring ringing rocks would have been just as powerful. For prehistoric cultures living intimately with the landscape, the discovery of a stone that sang would have been momentous. It would have been seen as a stone touched by the spirits, a piece of the earth that held the voice of the gods or the ancestors. These rocks likely became central to ritual sites. Imagine a shaman or priest striking a specific ringing boulder at the climax of a ceremony, its otherworldly chime cutting through the night, signaling a connection to the divine. The sound itself, so unlike anything else in nature, would have demarcated sacred space, transforming a random outcrop into a temple. The enduring geological mystery is why. What gives these specific stones their voice while their neighbors, formed from the same bedrock and sitting side by side for millennia, remain stubbornly mute? The answer is not in the rock's chemical composition, but in its physical structure. Scientists believe the ringing property is due to a combination of extreme density and internal stress. The ringing rocks are typically very hard, fine-grained volcanic stones like basalt or diabase. As they cooled from molten lava millions of years ago, they contracted and solidified under tremendous pressure. This process can leave the rock under internal tension, with microscopic cracks and fissures locked in a state of stress. When struck, the entire boulder vibrates as a single, elastic unit, rather than dampening the energy. Crucially, the rock must also be isolated. In a ringing rocks field, each sonorous boulder is essentially suspended, touching its neighbors at only a few points. This allows it to vibrate freely. If the same rock were buried or fully seated on the ground, the energy from a strike would be transferred into the earth, and you would hear only a dull thump. The mute stones in the same field likely have different internal fracture patterns or are in just enough contact with the ground to silence their potential song. So these stones are literal bells, their clapper the hand of a curious human or the force of another falling rock. They are a perfect conversation between geology and human perception. The Earth, through a random quirk of physics, produces an object that rings. Humanity, hearing that ring, invests it with meaning, purpose, and sacred power. To stand in a ringing rocks field today is to participate in that ancient dialogue. You are not just hearing a cool sound, you are listening to the latent music of the planet, a hidden voice that has been waiting, sometimes for millions of years, for just the right touch to speak. The ringing stones speak a universal language of tone, but in the misty hills of Ireland, stones learn to speak in a very human tongue. Carved into the corners of weathered stone pillars, you will find a script that looks like nothing else, a series of straight lines and notches that seem to grow directly from the edge of the rock. This is Ogham, the earliest written alphabet of the Irish language, and it transforms these standing stones into direct, declarative voices from the early medieval world. Unlike the cryptic symbols of a lost civilization, Ogham is a code we have largely cracked. Its characters, or feda, are deceptively simple. Each letter is represented by a group of 1 to 5 straight lines, carved like tally marks along the natural edge or iris of the stone. A single stroke to the right of the edge might be the letter B, while 3 diagonal strokes crossing the edge could represent the letter C. It is a writing system perfectly adapted to its medium, designed to be carved with a chisel into hard stone, with no curves that would be difficult to execute. But what were these stone whispers saying? The vast majority of Ogham inscriptions are starkly practical and deeply personal. They are memorials and they follow a powerful, repetitive formula. A typical stone might read, in Old Irish, ex maci Y, which translates to ex-son of Y. The stone is saying, this land, this place, is connected to this man and his lineage. It is a voice from the 5th or 6th century declaring, I was here, my family owns this memory, and by extension, we claim this territory. These were not monuments erected by kings in the center of power, but by local chieftains and wealthy families on the boundaries of their holdings. You find them in fields, near ancient routeways, and on hilltops. The stone itself, often a pillar taken from the local landscape, becomes a permanent legal document, a property deed written in stone that everyone in the community would recognize. To pass an Ogham stone was to be reminded of the power and presence of a specific kin group, its message as clear as a fence post is today. But these stones do more than mark land, they preserve a language in its infancy. The inscriptions capture the very moment when Irish was first being committed to writing, capturing personal names and grammatical forms that would later evolve into the modern Gaelic tongue. When you sound out the name Vecarigas or Maci Corbry from the notches on a stone, you are pronouncing words exactly as a grieving son or a proud chieftain did over 1,500 years ago. The stone holds the phonetic shape of their speech frozen. This linguistic bridge is Ogham's greatest gift. It allows us to hear, in a very direct way, the voices of a people who left few other written records. The stones are quiet, but they are not cryptic. They are stating facts in the clearest terms they knew. They tell us that in a world of oral tradition, where stories were memorized and sung, the impulse to make something permanent was overpowering. By carving a name into a stone that would outlast generations of storytellers, they found a way to make the land itself recite their genealogy. To run your fingers along those notches today is not just to touch history, it is to trace the very lines of a spoken claim, a family's voice made solid, ensuring that even after their stories were forgotten, their stone would still say their name. Creation itself began with a single, silent stone. In the shimmering heat of ancient Heliopolis, the spiritual heart of Egypt, priests taught that in the beginning there was only none, a boundless, dark, and formless ocean of chaos. From those primordial waters, a single mound of earth miraculously rose. This was the Benben. It was not just a hill, but the first solid thing, the anchor point for all existence, the place where order was born from disorder. Upon this sacred mound, the sun god Autumn, later syncretized with Ra, manifested himself. He stood upon the Benben and began the act of creation, bringing forth the first gods, Shu and Tefnut, and setting the cycles of day and night into motion. The Benben was therefore more than a location. It was the catalyst, the stage upon which the universe spoke itself into being. This powerful myth did not remain a mere story. It became the blueprint for Egypt's most iconic architecture. The ancient Egyptians, masters of making myth tangible, sought to recreate this primordial mound in stone. The earliest form was a short, squat obelisk with a rounded top, placed in temple precincts as a focal point for worship. But the ambition grew grander. The pyramid itself, that most enduring symbol of Egypt, is a direct architectural echo of the Benben mound. Each smooth, sloping side, culminating in a sharp point, was designed to catch the first and last rays of the sun, replicating that first moment of light striking the primordial hill. And at the very apex of these pyramids, there sat a physical Benben stone, a pyramidion. This capstone, often sheathed in electrum, an alloy of gold and silver, would blaze like a second sun under the Egyptian sky. It was the finishing touch, the point of contact between the monumental human construction below and the divine realm above. The pyramidion was the pyramid's active component, the piece that transformed a massive tomb into a machine for resurrection, channeling the power of Ra directly down into the burial chambers below to aid the pharaoh's soul in its ascent to the stars. This idea extended to the towering obelisks that stood before temple gates. Their pointed tops, also called pyramidions, served the same purpose. They were petrified rays of sunlight, frozen bolts of divine energy connecting earth to heaven. Every obelisk was a speaking stone, its silent form declaring the same eternal message. Here is the place where the world began. Here is the path the sun god takes. The Benben's voice was not one of sound, but of profound symbolic resonance. It spoke of origin and stability. In a land defined by the Nile's predictable floods and the desert's encroaching chaos, the idea of a solid mound emerging from the waters was a powerful metaphor for life, order, and renewal. The stone represented the enduring victory of Maat, the principle of cosmic order and truth, over the ever-present threat of chaos. By replicating it in their sacred architecture, the Egyptians were performing a perpetual act of cosmic maintenance, reinforcing the very fabric of their world. They were building their own primordial mounds, ensuring that the sun would continue to rise, the river would continue to flood, and order would prevail. To touch a pyramidion or to stand in the shadow of an obelisk was to be in the presence of that first creative utterance. The stone itself was a silent participant in the original divine speech, a physical echo of the moment a god stood upon a hill and spoke light, life, and time into the endless dark. It reminds us that for ancient cultures, the grandest structures were often attempts to answer the most fundamental question: how did everything begin, and how do we keep it from ending? The Blarney Stone's symbolic perfection speaks of a divine blueprint, but at Puma Punku in the Bolivian highlands, the stonework suggests a blueprint from another world entirely. Here, scattered across a windswept plateau near Lake Titicaca, lie the shattered remains of what was once a grand, terraced platform. The ruins are not of walls or statues, but of a colossal, intricate puzzle. The pieces are massive blocks of andesite and diorite, some of the hardest stone on the planet, and they are not simple rectangles. They are H-shaped blocks with perfect, recessed notches. They are interlocking components with complex geometric channels and tabs. They feature surfaces so flat and smooth they seem machined, and cuts so precise and sharp they appear to be made with industrial tools. To stand among these stones is to feel a profound disconnection from history. This does not look like the work of hammerstones and copper chisels. It looks engineered. The precision is the central, screaming mystery. Some blocks have drill holes that are perfectly cylindrical, with no deviation or chatter marks. Others feature cuts that meet at perfect 90-degree angles, with inner corners so sharp they seem impossible to achieve without a modern saw. The interlocking designs are not just decorative, they are functional, like pieces of a giant stone Lego set, designed to fit together with earthquake-resistant stability. The stones seem to speak a language of advanced geometry and physics that we struggle to translate. How could a culture, believed to be part of the Tiwanaku Empire over 1,000 years ago, accomplish this? The mainstream archaeological view offers a narrative of immense skill and patience. It suggests that with stone hammers, abrasive sand, water, and countless generations of labor, such precision could be achieved. They point to the nearby quarries and the sheer willpower of ancient civilizations. Yet, even the most dedicated experimental archaeologists have struggled to replicate the finest details of Puma Punku's stonework with the presumed tools of the era. The gap between the proposed methods and the actual artifact is so vast it has spawned a chorus of alternative theories, all centered on one idea, that the builders possessed a lost technology. Some researchers propose the use of advanced machinery, perhaps powered by a forgotten energy source that could cut stone like butter. Others look to more esoteric possibilities, like the use of focused sound waves or vibrational frequencies. This is where the legends of speaking, living stones find their most dramatic expression. The theory suggests that the builders of Puma Punku had discovered a way to alter the state of the stone itself. Through a specific combination of sound, perhaps from massive tuning forks or chanting, coupled with a plant-based chemical compound, they could temporarily reduce the molecular bonds within the rock. In this state, the andesite would become malleable, almost clay-like, allowing artisans to mold it into these impossible shapes with relative ease. Once the effect wore off, the stone would reharden, locking in its perfect machined form. This idea of stone softening is not unique to Bolivia. It appears in legends from many ancient cultures, from Egypt to India, often attributed to the use of a mythical plant juice or the words of the gods. At Puma Punku, such a technology would explain everything: the lack of tool marks, the seamless joins, the intricate internal channels that seem too delicate to carve. It transforms the site from a construction project into an alchemical ritual where the very essence of matter was persuaded to cooperate. And if humans could command stone to soften and obey, what would that look like to a later generation who had lost the knowledge? It would look like magic. It would look like the work of gods. This is precisely what local Aymara legend says. They speak of a time before the Great Flood, when their ancestors were aided by Viracocha, the creator god, and a race of divine beings. These entities, possessing knowledge beyond human understanding, built Puma Punku in a single night, making the stones move and fit together of their own accord. In some versions, giants are the masons, their immense strength making light work of the colossal blocks. The legends are not mere fantasy, they are a cultural memory trying to explain the unexplainable. They represent the human mind confronting a technological achievement so far beyond its own that the only logical conclusion is a supernatural one. The stones of Puma Punku, therefore, speak in two conflicting dialects. One is the cold, precise language of geometry and engineering, a silent shout of technical prowess. The other is the warm, vibrant language of myth, a story of gods and giants who conversed with the earth. Whether you see a lost high technology or the apex of ancient skill, the message is the same. These stones declare that our understanding of the past is incomplete, that there are chapters in human history written in a grammar we have yet to fully comprehend. They lie there not as ruins but as a persistent question, asking us if we have forgotten how to listen to the secrets hidden in the very rock beneath our feet. From the impossible geometry of Puma Punku to the resonant chime of a ringing rock, we have wandered a world where stone is anything but silent. We have listened to stones that sing with the wind at Carnac, weep with mineral tears in Jerusalem, and whisper conspiratorial legends on an English hillside. Some speak through the sheer force of their mystery, like the perfect spheres of Costa Rica or the walking giants of Avebury. Others offer a clear voice, whether it is a Viking king's boast carved in runes, a pharaoh's name spelled out by the Rosetta Stone, or a family's claim notched in Ogham. They have served as divine receivers in pyramid shafts, as communal instruments in ancient temples, and as recording devices for both geological processes and perhaps for human emotion itself. This incredible tapestry reveals a universal and timeless human impulse. We look at the enduring, immutable rock of our world and we cannot accept its silence. We must project onto it our stories, our grief, our questions for the gods, and our desperate need to be remembered. We inscribe it, we align it with the stars, we balance it on impossible cliffs, and we listen intently for its reply in the groan of ice, the sigh of wind, or the patterns of a crack. These 30 stories are not just about geology or archaeology, they are about conversation. They are proof of our enduring desire to be in dialogue with the earth, to make the landscape a participant in our history and a keeper of our memory. So now, the final question turns to you. Among these whispers from the stone, which one spoke the loudest? Was it the heartbreaking legend of a daughter turned to stone, forever weeping? The clever engineering of a fortress that carries a clap a kilometer into the sky? Or the simple, profound mystery of a boulder that decided to take a walk across a desert floor? The world is still full of stones with stories. Perhaps there is a local legend in your own town, a peculiar rock formation, a carved boundary marker, or a standing stone in a farmer's field that holds a forgotten tale. Share it in the comments below and let us keep this ancient conversation alive. If you have enjoyed this journey into historical mystery, subscribe for more explorations into the hidden voices of